Today I'm going to paint a cup of cappuccino. Hi friends, I'm Olga Koelsch, watercolor artist, teacher and a book author. Welcome to my studio. I have a roll of paper tape, so I will use it to draw a saucer, and the inner part I will use to draw a cup. The cup is supposed to have a handle, so I also added to my very complicated drawing. Firstly, let's paint a saucer. It is white, but we do not paint white on white with watercolor. I would like to add some hues into this white. I will use cerulean blue and I might use some purple paints. I would like to glaze just the area, not including the handle of a cup. I use my cerulean blue with the tip of the brush. I go around the edge, the outside edge, on one side. Then I will step aside a bit and add another part with just cerulean. And then I add my purple mixes, a lot under the handle. It will be a bit of darker area here because of the shadow. And I also can add some accents. It's all nice, beautifully mixing by itself basically. If it feels a bit too dry, you can wash your brush and add a little bit more of water around. And at the same time, you see I'm distributing those paints a little bit smooth. And if the opposite happens, a bit too much water, I dry my brush with a paper towel. And with clean, damp brush, I just remove all unnecessary water drops. Now I will repeat just the same, but with the inner circle. So basically it will be the shadow from the cup. And I will use mostly I will use my purple. It's even not shadows, it's more like reflections. And if you have a look at some white object, especially glossy white object as a cup, you will see that it reflects basically everything what's around. I want to keep my paints clear, crispy, therefore I always wash my brush. The cup has its thickness. I step aside from the edge and I can map out this thickness. And then again I use my cerulean and purple, but now I try to place cerulean and purple in a little bit different places. For example, here I used mostly purple paints, therefore I will use a bit more of cerulean here, same here, and then purple more close to cerulean. The whole point of this to create more contrast and more interesting color combinations around. So I added a couple of relatively dry brush strokes, then I wash my brush, I dry it with a paper towel, and then I soften what I painted. So I go with my clean, damp brush around this small edge of my future cup, and I try to soften those brush strokes. For the coffee, I would like to use burnt sienna. So firstly I prepare my mix. It's relatively creamy, it has some water, but it's not transparent. Finer brush, for example brush number 2. I load my brush and I imagine some typical decoration for cappuccino, some leaf. So I paint around this imaginary leaf just creating outlines. You can go creative, maybe paint a heart or something else. And then I switch to a bigger brush loaded with water, and I go very quickly, not wasting my time, around this imaginary leaf and soften the edges and bringing this brown paint outside. Firstly, I do it just with clean brush, but as soon as I watered the area around, I can add my brown paint. And I started relatively light, and I try to create uneven texture, so some brown, darker brush strokes and some light areas. And of course it will look more interesting if you add darker spots around this leaf or whatever we created on the coffee. I try to avoid making harsh brush strokes. Everything should flow, be fluid, something like this. And while my paper is still wet, I grab a bit more my burnt sienna and I can add some movement around the cup and under of some leaves under here. I grab just a little bit of very diluted same brown mix and I can paint inside this decoration, leaving some white spots, just white spots. And then you have a look whether you're happy with the shape or you can correct something. What would be nice to add is some dots, wet and wet, just with the tip of your brush. Very typical for the texture. Again, a little bit more of brighter brush strokes to define this leaf. While coffee is getting dry, not getting cold, getting dry, let's paint the handle. Usually there is some glare because it's not straight handle, it has some rounded shape. So I glaze the handle with water and I use a bit of purple where it connects to the cup, and I use a little bit of cerulean on the opposite side, following the same principle to add colors which we do not have around in the neighborhood, and try to leave really white spot somewhere around. Then I switch to my smaller brush. With my paints, cerulean and purple, I can add a little bit of thickness to the sauce and to the cup. I draw a line. So I draw a line like this, not around the whole area, just at some point. And then I switch my brush. I have clean damp brush, and with clean damp brush I soften this edge, and at the same time I can correct the shape. If it didn't was so round, I can correct it. So now let's repeat the same, but with the purple part. Turn your paint upside down because it's more organic for our hand to create those lines rather than those. and I create again a line. Then I switch my brush, clean damp brush, and with the tip of the brush I soften the edge. Soften the edge like this. I want to add just more contrast, therefore I use my cerulean. It was a cerulean pot, and I paint as I did before, but now I paint next to the cup. I paint much brighter cerulean line. Then I switch my brush, clean damp brush, and soften again this area. And if necessary, if you want to make some corrections, you can repeat this trick, but with our brown. For example, I would like to add a little bit of shadow, a little bit of color underneath this leaf. So I outline this leaf, just outline this leaf, and then I switch to my clean damp brush, and with the tip of the brush I soften it. Your painting is probably a little bit different from mine. It always happens when we paint wet in bed. So, but if you would like to add a little bit more of contrast, you can use this trick. My brown mixed a bit too much with the cup, so I do this outline, bright outline. Then I use clean damp brush and softening the edge. Typical for those cappuccino decorations is a lot of lines. So with the tip of the brush and my brown mix, I create, so to say, middle line, and I create some curvy lines inside my leaf. Everything should have very curvy moves. And now my cup of cappuccino is ready, and I'm looking forward for a coffee break. Thank you so much for painting with me. I hope you enjoyed the process. I'm looking forward to know what would you like to paint next. See you soon. Bye bye.